Welcome to the 7th lecture in Module 6, and in this lecture we'll talk about JavaScript and jQuery. Now, JavaScript is a lightweight interpreted programming language that was designed to be embedded within and to provide scripting capabilities to other applications. What's a scripting language? Well, scripting languages are used to write scripts that are different from the core code of an application. Scripts are often written in a language that's different from the language of the core application, and they are primarily intended to be created by end users. In our case, the scripting capability is client-side JavaScript. What this means is there's a JavaScript interpreter in your browser, and we can send JavaScript code to the browser, and it'll be executed within your browser. So this combines the scripting capabilities of a JavaScript interpreter and the document object model, because that's what the script will act on, elements that are in your document object model. As I mentioned here, all browsers now include a JavaScript interpreter or engine, and this makes web applications much more dynamic, as you can pull in JavaScript code and execute it in the browser and change elements on the web page very dynamically using client-side JavaScript. Now, it's also possible to run JavaScript in other environments. One famous one at the moment is called Node.js. It's a server-side JavaScript application that's much different than client-side JavaScript. So if you're interested in JavaScript in general, take a look at Node.js. Now, JavaScript is primarily used to write functions that are included in or embedded in HTML pages that are delivered by a web server. And this is the goal here is to dynamically change the content on a web page. Now, because JavaScript code runs locally in the browser, it can quickly respond to user actions without having to go all the way back to the server in order to fetch new content. So using JavaScript, it's possible to make your web application a lot more responsive. You can change portions of a web page without having to reload the entire web page, or you can perform client-side validations prior to submitting a form. These are all things that you can do with JavaScript. Now again, the important thing to understand here is that the DOM is reflected into the JavaScript interpreter, and that's what JavaScript is operating on when you're doing client-side JavaScript. The syntax of the Java language is highly influenced by the C programming language. However, JavaScript is multi-paradigm. It supports prototype-based, functional, and imperative, as well as scripting approaches to programming. We don't have time to go over all of the elements of JavaScript. I'll just show you a few examples of the language, but I encourage you to dig deeper. It's easy to access a JavaScript interpreter in your browser. You can just put JavaScript code into an HTML file, enclose it with the script tag, and then open it up in your browser, and the code will be executed. Another way is to use the JavaScript console that's provided as a part of the developer tools that come with your browser. Here's an example. We're going to take this function, these are the Fibonacci numbers, and we're going to compute them using a JavaScript function. And here's the function. So create a file on your machine called fib.html and write this code into it. If you do that and then open it up in your browser, it'll compute the Fibonacci numbers. So take a look at the code and see if you can understand what it's doing. Now, to execute this code in your browser, you can either double-click on it or you can specify the path to the file. If you double-click on the file, it'll actually show you the path in your browser address window. Let's take a look. So I've opened up a text editor and I wrote the code that I showed you on the previous slide into this file. Added a few other things. There's a head here that has a title for the page, and then in the body section I have this script that I showed you on the previous slide, and let's look at what that script does. And by the way, if you just simply put this script in the file and select it, it'll run in your browser and it'll execute this code. Now remember, the root of the DOM is document, and I'm writing a level 2 header that says table of Fibonacci numbers at the top of the page essentially, and then it goes into a loop, and this loop computes the Fibonacci numbers, and it writes out a string, Fibonacci, and the particular Fibonacci number, Fibonacci 1, 2, 3, etc., and then the value of that Fibonacci number. And on the next line, there's a new line. It's a break that's inserted after every number is computed. So let's save this file and execute it. Here's the file on my file system. If I double-click this file, it'll open in the browser, and that's because it has an HTML extension. And the JavaScript code in it will be executed in my browser. So let's do that. And we'll see, there is the table of Fibonacci numbers. There's the level 2 heading, and these are all the Fibonacci numbers that are computed. Now, there's an actual easier way to execute JavaScript code directly as a part of your web developer tools. Let's open those up, and let's select Console. Now that I'm at the console, I can directly execute JavaScript code. So let's say x equal 5 creates a variable called x and stores the value 5 there. Y equal 2. Z equals x plus y. So we can do these types of things. And now I can write an alert. An alert is just a pop-up that will appear as a part of your browser. So I can write an alert that says Z equals, and then I'm going to concatenate the actual value of the variable C here. And this is, as I hit return, a pop-up window shows up, and if I hit OK, it goes away. If you'd like to learn a bit more about how to write code using JavaScript, just go to w3schools.com, and you'll see that there's a JavaScript tutorial here. Select that tutorial, and it'll teach you a little bit more about the types of things that you can do with JavaScript. And again, you can just put that JavaScript code into a HTML file and execute it, or you can execute it directly through the console, as I've already showed you. Now, client-side JavaScript opens the possibility for people to deliver malicious code to your browser, and you have to protect against this, and let's see how. Browsers guard against this malicious code using two strategies. First, the client-side JavaScript is run within a sandbox in your browser that only allows the client-side JavaScript to do certain web-related functions. For example, you can't write to the file system, you can't create files, you can't write to disk using client-side JavaScript. And the other thing that happens is JavaScript code is constrained by what's known as the same origin policy. Scripts from one website simply cannot access the DOM from another website, and that's the same origin policy. And this policy is used to guard against an attack that's known as cross-site scripting, where one script interferes with the HTML delivered from another website. Now, there are numerous JavaScript libraries that have been written to make your life a little bit easier, and Rails uses jQuery. We'll talk a little bit about that. jQuery is by far the most popular library for JavaScript. In fact, an entire ecosystem has been built up around jQuery, including jQuery UI, which provides a beautiful user interface. If you go to this site, you can actually roll your own theme, and it'll deliver it to you. So take a look at that. jQuery supports this notion of unobtrusive JavaScript, and this is the separation of content and behavior. In other words, you specify the elements in your document, and then you use jQuery to attach behavior to those elements. When you're using unobtrusive JavaScript, you shouldn't be injecting scripts into your HTML. You separate them out into a separate file, just as we did with cascading style sheets. Now, jQuery developers placed a very high priority on ensuring that this code worked consistently across all browsers. That's one of the benefits of using jQuery. If it works in one browser, it tends to work in any browser. The incompatibilities between browsers have pretty much gone away at the moment. This used to be a lot bigger deal, but still, that's a benefit from using jQuery. Now, the focus in jQuery is on retrieving elements from the HTML page and then performing operations on them. Elements in jQuery are retrieved using selectors. And here's how it's done. You use the jQuery, open parentheses, and then the selector you want to apply the following commands to that I'll show you in a moment. Now, these selectors are the same selectors that I showed you for cascading style sheets. So a class selector, an ID selector, and so forth. There's a shortcut as well that's often used. Rather than specifying jQuery, you'll also often just see a $sign. So these are the same thing. What I show you here, jQuery selector and the $sign selector, they're the same thing. They're calling the jQuery JavaScript library. Let's take a look at an example. So the elements that are wrapped with additional functions or methods, these elements are referred to as the wrapped set, and the available methods that you can apply to this wrap set, you you can find all of the methods that are available to you at api.jquery.com. So here's an example. The $sign, and then here's the selector. I want to find the div that has the class bye-bye, and I want to hide it. And so what will happen if there's a div in your page that has a class called bye-bye, if you run this on it, that method called hide will actually make it disappear from the page. Now, jQuery commands, one of the interesting things about them is that they can be chained, and here's an example of that. I'm hiding the div called bye-bye, and then I'm adding it to a class called removed. So I'm creating a new class for that element that I can later refer to. So all of the elements that have been removed, I could make them reappear again by using the method called show. Let's take a look at how Rails handles JavaScript and jQuery. First of all, I've opened up the blog application in a text editor, and go to the gem file that's in the root of your application. Let's click on that, and we'll see that about midway down, it's including the gem. And remember again that gems are just packages that Rails loads for you. And it's going to load one called jQuery Rails. And so this is how you get the jQuery support as a part of Rails. Next, go to Assets. And again, I showed you this previously. There's a JavaScript and a style sheet. So this is referred to as the asset pipeline. These are the things that Rails loads for you automatically for each page. And you'll see that there's an application.js, a comments.js.coffee, and a post.js.coffee. And there's nothing in those at the moment. And what is this .coffee extension? Well, it's something called CoffeeScript. And CoffeeScript is just really a simplification of JavaScript that you can use. And if you open up one of these, I'll open up the post, you'll see it says, place all the behaviors and hooks related to the matching controller here. All this logic will be automatically available to you in application.js. You can use CoffeeScript in this file. And to learn more about CoffeeScript, go to coffeescript.org. Here I've pulled it up in the browser for you, and it describes how you can use CoffeeScript. Again, I'm just going to use regular JavaScript here, but you can either use JavaScript or CoffeeScript in these files. Now let's take a look at how these JavaScript files are loaded for you. Let's again open up the Web Developer Tools, and if you go to Elements, if you look in the Head section, you'll see these are all of the CSS files, and down below you'll see the JavaScript files. There's comments.js, post.js, and application.js. And up above you'll see that jQuery.js is loaded for you as well. So jQuery at this point is available to you in this application. Let me demonstrate that to you. Recall that you can use the jQuery library by using $. And let's, on this page, recall that that listing post that's shown up above in blue, that's an h1 header. So if I want to say h1.hide, it'll hide that and it's gone. If I want it to reappear again, just say show and that element will show again. If you want to, I'll show you some other things you can do. Let's look at the body of the document. This is the body section of the document. And before the body, I'd like to add some HTML. Let's put a message here, it says. And if I do this, it'll actually add that message up top as I've shown here. And so there's quite a few things that you can do with the jQuery API. And if you go to api.jquery.com, you'll see that there's these are all of the various methods that are available to you. And again, they operate on the wrap set. And so take a look at these methods that are available to you. This is the one I just used. And experiment with it, play around. You can do this again directly in your console and affect the page that's currently showing in your browser. This completes the 7th lecture in Module 6.